Did you know that Canada has a long history with Ukraine? In fact, we have the third largest population of Ukrainians after Ukraine and Russia, and it's the 11th largest ethnic population in Canada. Way back in the 1890s, the European territory inhabited by Ukrainians was divided and taken by the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. Sound familiar? The first wave of Ukrainian immigrants began arriving in Canada, settling and farming the prairie provinces. They left their mark in Canada in so many ways, from the foods we eat to interesting roadside attractions. Needless to say, many Canadians of Ukrainian heritage have done remarkable things, and some even becoming famous in the process. So, let's get into a short list of some notable Ukrainian Canadians. You may know the name Randy Bachman, as he is a well-known guitarist, singer, and songwriter, and a founding member of the bands The Guess Who and Bachman Turner Overdrive. He also hosts the CBC radio show Vinyl Tap. Randy was born to Carl Bachman and Anne Dobrinsky, making him of half German and half Ukrainian descent. In a 2019 quote, he says, "About 10 years ago, I was asked to join the Ukrainian Festival in Toronto. My mom's family was Ukrainian and as working hard as they come. I've always been grateful for the work ethic my parents gave me. It's the immigrant story and a very Canadian one, too." Chantal Kreviazuk is another singer-songwriter with strong Ukrainian roots. In a recent newspaper interview, she states that her great-grandfather fled an aggressive Russia to find safety in Canada. He settled in Lockport, Manitoba in the early 1900s. Kreviazuk is doing what she can to help those in Ukraine as the current Russian invasion continues. The Winnipeg native has partnered with Unite with Ukraine, working to get supplies like protective gear and first aid equipment to those defending their country. "It's so powerful to me now," Kreviazuk says about her Ukrainian identity. "I carry this inexplicable vibe, this feeling right now. Those are my people, and it just makes me really sad."
Helping people put their lives back together, helping really to stop the cycle of war. And so, because it's personal for me being pretty Ukrainian through and through, other than my Indigenous maternal grandmother, I'm very Ukrainian and was raised very Ukrainian. So I'm very proud. I always, growing up, you know, being Métis, I felt I had to be proud of being Métis because they were the underdog. And of course, Ukrainians were the underdog at some point as well, but I didn't feel that about being Ukrainian. But it was in this moment that the invasion happened that I didn't realize how proud I was to be Ukrainian. I have to stop myself from crying now. It's very hard. So, you know, I carry a very Ukrainian name and pride with me everywhere, and every show, every city I go to.
Of the many Ukrainian Canadian athletes from this country, Wayne Gretzky is probably the most famous and internationally recognized. He even appeared in a documentary about hockey players with Ukrainian origins. He played 20 seasons in the National Hockey League for 4 teams from 1979 to 1999. Nicknamed the Great One, Wayne has been called the greatest hockey player ever by many sports writers, players, and even the NHL itself.
Grandmother used to yell at me in Ukrainian. She always told me "Chukai, Chukai" and "Shedeh," and that's how I kind of learned. And I used to say to my parents that there's people coming over, they're Ukrainian, Dad can speak to them. So we had a lot of Ukrainian influence in our family.
Though there is some confusion about his heritage, Belarusian, Russian, Polish, or Ukrainian, his father Walter Gretzky stated that his first language was Ukrainian. The Honourable Chrystia Freeland began her career as a journalist and is currently Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. In 2018, she was recognized as Foreign Policy's Diplomat of the Year, and in 2020 she was awarded Freedom House's Mark Palmer Prize for her years of work championing democracy and human rights. Chrystia's maternal grandparents were born in Ukraine, and she attended the University of Kyiv, where she studied Ukrainian, even though she was already fluent in the language. At home in Canada, she speaks Ukrainian with her children. Ukrainian Canadians have even gone to space. It was a childhood dream, and with hard work and an extensive education, Dr. Roberta Lynn Bondar is Canada's first female astronaut and the world's first neurologist in space. She traveled aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery on January 22, 1992, representing the scientific community and conducting over 40 advanced experiments for 14 nations. Born in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, her father was of Ukrainian descent and her mother Mildred was English. Her father instilled the love of education and experimentation in Roberta early on, and in grade 7 her father even built her a laboratory in their basement. Dr. Bondar is the recipient of multiple honors and awards from organizations and universities across Canada. Continuing with Ukrainian Canadians in space, William Shatner also makes our list. How could you not include Captain Kirk from the 1960s TV series Star Trek and his recent trip on Blue Origin, making Shatner the oldest person in space at age 90. Shatner's career has spanned 7 decades in theater, television, and film, as well as releasing several albums. William Shatner was born on March 22, 1931, to Anne and Joseph Shatner. He was raised in the very Jewish Côte Saint-Luc neighborhood of Montreal. The Shatners came to Canada from Austro-Hungary and the Russian Empire, which is present-day Ukraine and Lithuania. His paternal grandfather anglicized the family name to Shatner.
I'm Ukrainian, and I was born in Toronto, Canada, but I come from a Ukrainian family.
You may recognize this voice, French, Russian, and Italian. She says she attended Ukrainian school and wasn't the biggest fan of going to class on Saturdays, but that she's now grateful for that time in her life. Quote, "It gave me a sense of history and a sense of pride of being Ukrainian. Her family is very proud of their heritage and continues to celebrate their roots."
The Ukrainian pride is so strong. We are fiercely proud of being Ukrainian. We are fiercely proud of our culture, our traditions, our language, our history.
Luba Goy is a Canadian comedian who portrays all sorts of funny characters and was one of the stars of the Royal Canadian Air Farce on CBC.
Hello, Ukrainian festival will be so exciting.
Luba was born in Germany to Ukrainian parents immigrating to Canada in 1951, and she grew up in Ottawa. She has won 15 ACTRA Awards, a Juno, and the Maclean's Honor Roll, and was among the first Canadians to be inducted into the International Humor Hall of Fame in 1996. She received the Outstanding Achievement Award from Women in Film and Television. In addition to comedy, she has voiced various animated TV series. Within the Ukrainian Canadian community, she occasionally has comedy performances that highlight her Ukrainian heritage, and she speaks the language fluently.
The festival asked me, what does being Ukrainian Canadian mean to you? What does it mean to me? I consider myself to be the luckiest Ukrainian Canadian comedian in Canada. And I've had so many wonderful opportunities to perform countless times at every Ukrainian festival and Vegreville, which I loved with the big Ukrainian egg there. Just meeting hundreds of thousands of people, bringing laughter, bringing all my crazy characters.
Seth Rogen comes from a Jewish family of Ukrainian and Russian origin. He says his grandmother was born in a caravan as her parents fled from the pogroms, later immigrating to Canada. This Vancouver funny man has starred in numerous films after starting out in the comedy circuit.
In old country of Slupska, I am ditch digger. As far as jobs in Slups go, it's pretty good. We are the Greenbaums, and we have...
Interestingly, his movie An American Pickle has Seth playing the role of an Eastern European Jewish immigrant. He learned to do the accent with a voice codec. The famous TV game show host Alex Trebek was born in Sudbury, Ontario, to George Edward Terabachek and Lucille Marie Lagace. Alex began his career with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation in 1961 and moved over to American game show hosting in 1973. He hosted a number of game shows before his famous role on Jeopardy! He was named an Officer of the Order of Canada in 2017. Writing in his 2020 memoir, Mr. Trebek said, "My father, George Edward Terabachek, was this little Ukrainian immigrant who earned his passage money to Canada mainly by playing violin at weddings and partings at his hometown. He arrived from Ukraine in the late 1920s. He was on a train bound for Manitoba to be a farm laborer, but when he got to Ottawa, he decided he didn't want to work on a farm and he jumped off. He had a cousin, my Uncle Mike, who lived in Toronto, and he touched base with him. Once Dad mastered the fundamentals of basic English and changed his last name to match his cousin's. In Toronto, my parents had a ton of Ukrainian, Russian, and Polish friends, and that made for some great celebrations, great parties. On Sundays, everyone came over to our place. It was a 3-story rented house with an in-ground gas pump in the backyard. We hosted because everyone else lived in apartments. There were lavish spreads of herring, dill pickles, cabbage rolls, and of course schnapps and vodka. Sadly, this popular game show host passed away in 2020. We hope you enjoyed this short list of remarkable Ukrainian Canadians. If you have Ukrainian roots, feel free to share your family story in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there are a few things you can do to help support our channel. Give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and leave a comment. Let us know if there's a Canadian story you would like us to cover in a future episode. For more content about Canada, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon to be notified of our next video upload.